Alrighty. So, Stephen, appreciate you joining us today. And Sharretts Plating in Pennsylvania. Tell us all that you all offer, your processes, and your size, and all that you all do there.
Well, thanks, Tim, for having me. Sharretts Plating is a 100-year-old company this year. Originally started in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania as Charles D. Snyder and Son, Inc. And different family, not mine, that had been doing a lot of miscellaneous metal finishing in and around the state capitol, even predating 1925. So things like polishing statues, repairing people's heirlooms, hollowware, silverware, things of that nature. And my grandfather came into this business in the late 1930s, early 1940s as a teenager, and wasn't old enough to go off to war duty until post-war, when he was drafted as an 18-year-old and did peacekeeping in Europe. The original owner, Charles Snyder, promised him and many others that when you come back, your job will still be there.
Oh, great.
And that promise held true. And when he did, there was a growing trend in South Central Pennsylvania, which is the Harrisburg, York, and Lancaster area of our state, where manufacturers were moving to the area from New Jersey and New York and the larger metropolitan areas. And this area became quickly known for connector electronic manufacturing. Companies like Tyco Electronics, Amphenol, and Molex had their original starts in this area as well, with small connector companies and whatnot. And that need really grew fast, and we were in a good position to take on that work. It also helped that my grandfather was schoolmates with a lot of the people that became the president and chairman of these corporations now that they're in Harrisburg. So he had a natural in, and we became a top 2% tiered supplier to companies like Tyco and their partners for nearly 50 years. And that partnership with those companies lasted very close until the late 1980s, early 1990s, when markets really started to open up in the United States and competition spread around. By that point, my father and uncle had already entered the business by then in the late 1970s, early 1980s. And the business had grown to a second location here in York, Pennsylvania. They bought a failed electroplating company that was in the city of York, and later on built a facility that we presently occupy today in Emmetsville, which is just a little tiny borough on the outskirts of York, in a big industrial park that has grown steadily to its current size of about 50,000 square feet, not including office space and such. And it was a building that grew in phases. So with these customers, as we needed to expand, they would contractually sign with us, and we would grow extensions onto our building up until about 2005, which was the last extension on this building, which brought us to our current size. So we did a lot of contractual finishing work. We still do. We're a little different than most job shops in that we don't have high volume of in and out customers every day. We have larger clients that represent larger share of our business in areas that we work, such as gold plating or silver and so on. They basically have contractual rights to capacity on certain production lines. And that basically guarantees continuity for us so that we're not having to worry about fluctuations in the market as much with smaller clients. However, that dynamic has shifted in the last 20 years since I've entered the business in the early 2000s. And today we have more of a mix of large and small customers than we had in the last 40 years. So I think that has a lot to do with the economy and how we've changed, since the Great Recession and through the pandemic. So having a healthy mix of new customers as well as the stalwarts that
Hmm.
um, absorb the majority of our business and so on. Um, so my father and uncle both are basically retired and out of the business. My father has basically just retired as of this month,
Mm,
and
okay.
I am now by default the guy in charge at the top. So in small businesses, we wear a lot of hats. So while I may be the CEO, I also am the chief cook and bottle washer at times. Um,
Do it all. Yes,
yeah.
definitely.
So
Yeah.
we all understand what that means in this industry, and it's about preparing ourselves for tomorrow and giving ourselves the tools to be successful. So I have a little bit more education than a lot of my peers. I have a doctorate in decision sciences from Drexel University, and
Mm,
it's not that I like to tout that. It's basically the tools and the education that allow me to make better decisions financially and about how do we grow our business into different opportunities that are beside the normal. And what I mean by that is where to play and how to win at the end of the
right.
day. If I'm trying to compete with 100 different metal finishers on the very same finish, it's all about price and delivery, and it's a race to the bottom.
Right.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
we-
Yeah.
we've seen that writing on the wall for a while, and so our business model is really diversified in the last 20 years to what I like to call the holy trinity of
Mm,
finishing, which is plating on plastics, ceramics, and refractory group metals like titanium,
mm,
tungsten, and molybdenum. While we still offer finishing on traditional substrates like steel and copper alloys and aluminum alloys, um, the trend is towards the new technology that requires these exotic materials, whether it be for thermal stability, dielectric reasons with ceramics, plastics for lightweight or low cost manufacturing, but still need the coating for a functionality, whether it be
right.
electronics
Hmm.
or for strength. Those are the things that we're seeing the growth area in, and that's demonstrable on our website. So
Mm.
I'm just giving you a bit of a snapshot of
Yeah.
where we've come from.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and this, I think you've been since what, the early 2000s, right?
Correct.
Mid, yeah, but that's when you started there. But I'm sure, even from a young age, this is something you were exposed to, right? With your father working there and the family.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Since the early 1980s, I would travel with my father all over the country and later around the world to see
mm,
metal finishers. And we formed some very close relationships with some European companies. Previous ownership of a company called Electropoly in France that has
mm,
multiple locations across Europe, primarily known for their zinc and zinc alloy finishing and hot dip galvanization. Today, they're private equity owned, and I had a strong relationship with the founding family and still do for more than 30 years since the 1990s. And as a result, I'm bilingual in French. So, and having worked in their facilities in Europe for a few years and seen the technology, it was really eye opening for me to see what it's like in a different economy
right.
and what they're up against. So, yeah, my father basically was a role model for me, and I really found it fascinating and interesting. I have a sister and two cousins that chose not to come into the business. I don't know exactly their reasons, but I don't think they found it as interesting. Um,
Right.
and I just like to build stuff. Honestly, I think it's fascinating from a business standpoint, and being able to go out in the lab still and tinker with the chemistry or work on new R&D projects is still something I do to this day. And so I get to play in a few different spaces. Um,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Yeah, it seems to me that with your training, your collegiate training, and then, like I said, just being around and hearing and eavesdropping on how your father and run it, it doesn't seem like you chose a path of with running this company of going to the easy sell, like I said, automotive, those type of things. I see. Where at what point did you kind of decide there was a niche out there for a lot of these things, like you said, the ceramics and the 3Ds and those type of things, and plastics, which not a lot of people will try, right? I mean, that's been a concerted decision on your own part, maybe to go after some of those, right?
yeah. The plastics is something that we've dabbled with since the late 1970s, all the way up through the early 2000s, and it was a double-edged sword. There was always seeming momentum to go more into plastics from a manufacturing side point, but I don't think the industry was really ready. And I think that the OEMs that make the chemistry for the plastics, I don't think they felt confident enough to proliferate that technology know-how to make it reliable enough for most metal finishers to be successful in it. I will say that it's my estimation that the chemical cost is a driver. And I think that, especially when you're talking about precious metal catalysts to cause the plating to occur on plastic, traditionally, very little can be done to abate those costs. So I think it's really a barrier to entry for a lot of firms just on that level. Further, there's not a lot of technical experts available to come out from, whether it be McDermott or Atotech and the like, to help the thousands of metal finishers in this country. So they focus primarily on the captive manufacturers that make the injection molding and related products, and have sold them on doing their own finishing. Right. And you've written about some of them that have been abused. So they're not as environmentally friendly in terms of process. I think chromic acid traditionally, that's plastic, and that's a big hot topic issue, and so on. So we've seen the opportunity to do more plating on plastic because the electronics industry is trying to cheapen their products from the hardware that houses the circuits and so forth, and the avionics for flight hardware. But they still need the metal finish to make it work. They need the shielding for RF and EMI purposes. They still need grounding. They need rigidity. They need, resistance to the environment, those types of things. So that's still needed. And we basically tapped into some of our own R&D that has taken us to more green finishing capabilities with plastics that does not use harmful acids and things of that nature. And it's been about 10 years and growing. We've invested probably $1 million into that effort. It's high mix, low volume type work. It's not the plating on bumpers or the trim for vehicles and that type of stuff. It's the things that would be traditionally made out of aluminum and copper and other things for that type of hardware. And so the coatings on those are typically the same: nickel, tin, silver, gold, and selectively applied.
Gotcha. Yeah. I know you all do a lot. You work very closely with a lot of OEMs, do a lot of the R&D and working with them, and sort of be an extension of their, kind of extension of their company, because you're the subject matter experts in the finish, and they're not going to have that, and so they rely on you, and that kind of develops good partnerships that could last a long time, doesn't it? I mean,
it does. I mean, the challenge is forming the relationship. And today, it's harder than ever because we can get on a virtual call like this, and you may never have to or have the opportunity to go meet the person and form that relationship, build that bond, be able to share a meal with them, and so on. And so that makes it's convenient, but it's not convenient in terms of trying to create that personal connection with the customer. The other thing that we noticed today is being that everybody's so sensitive to cost because of inflation, wherever they can, they're going to go with the cheapest solution. And while they want to lower the cost of manufacturing product with like plastics and so forth, oftentimes adding coatings makes it more expensive than the metal version that it came from, simply because of the economics of supply and demand. So when you have low quantities, your price is typically higher. So whereas if you can saturate me with tens of thousands of parts, now your price is at pretty close to margin. So all those things are more challenging. The relationships are more transactional, There's a lot of multicultural aspects. We have folks from all over the world now. We're not just dealing with Americans. We're dealing
Mm,
with Europeans and the Asian market and so on. And everyone has a different mode of how they do business. Some
right.
it's
Yes.
very hard, and so it's
Hmm.
trying to get away from transactional type relationships is really anybody's challenge, and building a long-term relationship, so it's not just about cost and delivery,
Right.
quality given. And I'm hopeful that with reshoring of manufacturing and the resurgence here, that people start to value those relationships more and take care of their suppliers better than we have over the last 30 years.
Right. Yeah, definitely with that. You mentioned that the POP and those type of things, and I noted that you guys have added some kind of an advanced EN processes and some precious metal. We'll talk about those a little bit of what you've kind of added to those to your kind of your offerings there.
And so we've always had precious metal offerings
Hmm.
is what we've done as a company, because honestly, we could never say no to the OEMs like Tyco and so forth that said you're going to plate on every type of substrate, whether it be zinc die cast or aluminum, copper, steel, and so on. But they also said, hey, we need you to put zinc, tin, copper, nickel,
Mm,
gold, silver, whatever the soup du jour is, you got to do it.
mm,
And so there was never an ability to say all we're going to do is gold plating or silver plating. And um, to that effect, we're starting to narrow the scope of our offering more today than ever, just because of the market that we sit in here in the Mid Atlantic. There's, for example, less opportunity for zinc plating than there ever has been before. There's
hmm.
not much customers to fill those production areas with growth. So basically, we're starting to look towards where is the opportunity. It just so happens that with these substrates that I'm talking about, there's a higher value coating that's applied because of the precious metal nature or the near precious metal um,
Hmm.
uh, emphasis. So coatings in the precious metal area that we've really seen the highest um, growth rate in our platinum group metals.
Mm,
So not just traditionally, looking at gold and silver plating, which most metal finishes, if they do precious metals, they're probably default. You must do those.
right.
The platinum group has really seen the biggest growth because of the market change in semiconductor and
Mm,
also power generation. So whether it be platinum, palladium, rhodium, and now an up and comer is ruthenium, which is like the twin of rhodium on the
mm,
atomic chart, but a very low cost comparatively, has seen tremendous growth. And so
mm,
it I like to tell our customers it's not that I want to apply these metals, it's just the nature of the product that requires them. Where we really pride ourselves is on the material preparation. And that's
mm.
why our little acronym is surface treatment experts, simply because the underlying emphasis on is how do you prepare these materials so you can put whatever you want on them.
Right.
Just
Exactly.
so happens to be they want these materials on them for the functionality.
Right. Yeah. Well, it seems like you guys have marketed you all as kind of the experts in sort of the finishes that have extreme condition requirements. Correct. I mean, these are something which a lot of shops and companies will shy away from doing these type of things, right? And is that where you guys kind of you
Yeah,
know?
again, it's where to play and how to win.
Mhm.
I'm giving a lot of my peers inside knowledge today of why we're there, and I, I'm not concerned about that because it takes a lot of effort
Right.
and investment, and you've got to build your confidence to be successful there, and it's not for the faint of hearted. Um, whether it be plating on molybdenum or tungsten and their composites and so on. There, you can read any process guide or preparation uh, recipe that you can find, and none of them are foolproof. They
Mm,
don't. It is very frustrating when you're developing these process because the guides aren't they're just a guide. They're just that. Just
right.
like a technical data sheet from a chemical company. They're just guides. You have to
Right.
refine it and you're gonna fail.
Mm.
So it's how do you fail quickly and move on from it and get successful at it. And the other thing is the environmental aspect. A lot of these processes require harsh chemistries
Mm.
to remove the oxides or the scale or the passivity, so that you can put further coatings on there. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and again, some of them require things like chromic acid, which we don't use. But
Mm.
those types of things, when you look at the recipes that are patented formulas going back to the 1950s or 60s, they haven't changed. Nobody's updated them. So if you're starting new, you're going, well, I guess I need hexavalent chromium to coat the tungsten or molybdenum. Um, in places like California, they're forbidden
Right.
to grow
Yeah.
in those areas,
To even do
and
that. Yeah.
the rest of the
Yeah.
areas of the country are probably not far behind
Right. Yeah.
in elimination of that. So
Unfortunately,
yeah,
with that, from a management style aspect, like I said, you've been there for over 20 some years directly working there with your father, and I'm sure you've been a great asset for him with your training coming in. Um, and I'm sure he was there for his father, or those type of things. And now, you say he's sort of retired. He's moving away from him, and you're sort of how are you going? Who do you rely on? Who are you going to be tossing ideas around on? I don't know if he's still coming in every day, but I wouldn't. I mean,
right.
how does that, from a management standpoint, that you're kind of it now. You're there. You're the person that the buck
Yeah,
stops with you and does decisions.
honestly, he's phased out over the last handful of years,
Hmm.
and he still comes in as a support as we need, and he's always a phone call away for me. You know,
Gotcha.
um,
Right.
but we have a team that he basically started grooming a long time ago, and upskilling people, sending them out for continued education and so forth. Um, and this really started in the 1990s.
Mm.
We wanted to be self-sufficient, especially with regards to um, practices related to analyzing our chemistries and things of that nature. So we didn't have to rely on the chemical companies to come in and do it for us.
Right.
And so we just started training, from the base layers up, all the teams, and basically creating, cross training schedules and things of that nature, and so that there's duplicity and coverage, and every facet of our business, whether it be environmental, wastewater treatment, to maintenance related activities, to line operators being trained in titration analyses and things of that nature. So we can't have people pointing the finger at each other saying that they didn't do their job or I didn't do my job. It basically creates cross pollination so that everyone's accountable at the end of the day. And if something's wrong, not to continue on without stopping and finding the problem.
Mm.
With management, same deal. We started training teams internally to do ISO, becoming lead auditors. We
Mm.
were one of the first companies in the 1990s to have ISO certification for metal finishing in the United States.
Mm.
Um, right around that time, we had a Best Manufacturing Process Award from the Department of Navy in the early
Oh
1990s
yeah,
for
never heard it.
being
Yeah.
able to close loop our wastewater stream.
Mm.
That lasted for quite a while until requirements for semiconductor became too stringent with ionic contamination. We had
Mm.
to take off certain areas because the water quality, while it met most of our needs, wasn't good enough for semiconductor processing areas for deionization and reuse. But we did a lot of things to try to be environmentally friendlier, to consume less. From my team point, training is always ongoing. I'm always looking
Right.
at bringing chemists, process engineers, whether it be accountants or finance people into the fold. Today we look at creative solutions such as fractional
Mm.
experts and roles where needed. Sometimes we work with outside firms to take over um, things like payroll or things that,
Right.
just to help streamline efficiencies so that we're not doing redundant non-value add type work. Um, it's basically saying where is our focus and our strength, and then partnering with firms or people on the outside that can be a partner to us to take off the burden of having to have someone full time when we don't need them in those
Right.
areas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, how many? I know at one point you all had well over 200 employees there. Now, how's it now for you all there?
Yeah, so that was at the height of the late 90s when we had two facilities between York and Harrisburg. We
Hmm.
closed the Harrisburg facility in 2000, 2001 in that time frame.
Hmm.
It sits in a very old part of Harrisburg, about a block and a half off the state capitol. And
Hmm.
it was slated to go for economic redevelopment. And we got wind of it. So we were able to gift the property to the city and basically walk away from it clean,
Mm.
because it sits literally right behind a major creek tributary to the Susquehanna River.
Mm.
There's everything from steel manufacturing like Harsco, Bethlehem Steel, TRW Aerospace, where every major toxin has leached into
Yes,
that
into
water
that.
stream. So
Right.
when they did the environmental phase 2 and phase 3 testing, they found no discernible
Mm.
uh, toxicity from our plating facility, which was a big sigh of relief because they
Right.
did
Oh,
everything from
definitely.
cadmium plating, chrome plating, lead, everything imaginable there.
Mm.
And there was from, I mean, for 100, I mean, basically a 75-year history, they found nothing of any consequence,
Wow.
which was fantastic.
Yeah.
So today in York, as you said, we had, a couple hundred employees. That's all changed through automation. Today we maintain about 55 employees
Mm.
um, through automated and non-automated areas in production. The work type that we have here in this area is dramatically different. We used to
Hmm.
have tractor trailer loads every day coming in of local fastening company products, nuts, bolts, washers, things of that nature, large scale barrel zinc operations. Those days are gone. Today,
Mm.
it's just a very different mix. Everything from electroless nickel to tin plating to we still have
Right.
zinc, but we're not actively trying to grow that.
Hmm.
And then the specialty exotic areas, and then we have some assembly and packaging and product that we do, as well as some contract manufacturing with some partners, and to add value upstream to go vertical where possible.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What's on the horizon? What are anything you're looking to add, or anything that you got your eye on, or expanding in certain areas based
Uh,
on demand, or?
Semiconductor is a real big area for us right now.
Hmm.
Uh, we're working heavily on growing that presence, and we have a few irons in the fire right now that are going to expand that area greatly. Um, it's it takes quite a bit different emphasis than traditional metal finishing. We have to set up clean room. We're going to have to bring in some different expertise in semiconductor processing, which we're already started to acquire. And um, it's an interesting time. It's not going to take over our focus. However, it's a good diversification for us. We're investing in the future,
Hmm.
and it's just you can always have a foot in the present or the past, but we're always the next step is in the future and preparing for what tomorrow looks like. And um, that's really about the most anyone can do is try to see what the trends and changes are in your area of industry and try to adapt to it. Unfortunately, I think for far too long in the United States, we've all been trying to do the same thing,
Mm.
and uh, as a result, our industry is contracting at rates we um, don't all realize. And I always like to use Census Bureau data. And if you look at a 50-year trend back from 1977 to present, um, historical average per year, there's about 30 metal finishers per year going out of business since then.
Mm,
And that
yeah.
still holds true to this day. And the writing on the wall to me is when you see all the private equity groups and their peers
Yeah.
trying to solicit you constantly, day in, day out. And I've seen quite a few peers as of late in the news that have sold to some large equity groups. And it's astonishing to see. But what it tells me is these are very successful companies, but the industry is contracting, and I think a lot of us have hit a crescendo or a wall with where we can't really grow organically much longer.
Right.
And to do that would require too much more capital to invest that we don't have or can't get access to. And that's where these equity groups are really providing that ability. But it's that expression I like to say in Washington: if you're not at the table, you're what's for dinner. If you don't have a seat, that type of thing. And I'm afraid that's what's happening to a lot of our peers in the industry. Is while they do well, they never get big enough to where they have enough clout to have leverage with the tier one OEMs or the tier twos. And it's a cultural problem historically, and I think that the large equity groups or large firms around the world that are publicly traded are starting to get into metal finishing at large again and consolidate. And I think that's a message some of us embrace, and others are saying, I'd rather just ignore it. So don't think for a minute and don't look at those things and plan accordingly.